have these little rainbows all over my teeth and my face. I hope it doesn't bug you much. Hi textile buddies, I'm Daria, textile and surface pattern designer and painter. On this channel we talk all things textile pattern, color and artwork. Patterns are everywhere. I received a request to make a video about finding your art style. Well, we are tapping into the territory of the most difficult questions to answer, along with what is the meaning of life, what is true happiness, and so on. But I'm going to try answering this question from my perspective. As being an artist, I have been searching for my art style as well. In this video, I will use examples in textile design and watercolor painting and illustration, but I feel like most of what I'll be talking about applies to any kinds of visual art making, and sometimes even beyond that. Many things are the same for writers, choreographers, musicians, music producers, and so on. Please take 1 second to subscribe and like this video. It really helps with the channel promotion and motivates me to make more videos for you. So how can you find your art style? There are a few ways to approach this question. First of all, you can choose a style and commit to it. What does it mean? A lot of the things we'll discuss today will be similar to my previous video about finding your niche, so make sure to watch that one as well, as I think it might be helpful. So when I say choose a style as applied to surface pattern design, I mean you can choose the product you design for and the medium you will be using. For example, you decide to use Procreate software on iPad to make patterns for children's products. This market requires a certain look, light-hearted, stylized, almost naive shapes. Your style consists of the choices you make as an artist, consciously or subconsciously. What color palette do you mostly use, for example? You don't have to reuse the same exact palette all the time, of course, although it's also an option, and some artists do that. What kind of shapes and lines you use? Are most of your patterns geometric or symmetrical, or on the contrary, very organic and flowy and irregular? I personally tend to choose the latter. Do you use any textures, or is it mostly flat artwork? And more. So if you have already been making artwork and or designs, you can observe what stylistic choices you repeatedly make and find similarities. That is your style. I would say in this case we are not exactly finding a style, we are rather noticing it and singling it out. We can use words to help us describe the style. How does the artwork make you feel? What message does it convey? Here we are going beyond technique. It can be things like playful, whimsical, colorful, minimalistic, balanced, maximalist, decorative, folk, and so on. But what about the situation when you are just starting out your journey? Maybe you are at a point where you are learning by repeating after your favorite creators and your artwork looks very similar to theirs. It is a normal learning stage, but it's important to depart from it in time by making more and more artwork. Try making something a little bit different with new attempts. Change it up slightly. We all repeat after someone at some point. For example, about 5 years ago, I took a lot of Skillshare classes on painting flowers. I knew how to paint flowers, but I knew how to paint in general, but I felt like my knowledge was kind of outdated as I learned to paint many years ago, and I also had a long break. So I wanted to see how other artists approach flower shapes. I took a bunch of very different classes, and also 2 years ago I watched Helen Deltry's classes called Art in Bloom, and I remember this feeling when it's easy to watch the class and repeat after the teacher exact same thing, but it's so scary when you shut down the video and you have to do something new from scratch all by yourself. I painted some artworks that were not quite there yet. I was super upset, but I kept painting, and every new artwork was a little bit stronger. I did more paintings and also started filming lots of my tiny tutorials with the flowers, and in the end I sort of amalgamated all the Skillshare classes I took, and I introduced something slightly new, and my style was born. You can definitely see traces of Helen Delter's work here, traces of Esther Peck's classes on flower shapes, but my work is still a little bit different. I also took some in-person classes on painting and brought in something new into my artwork. For example, I started working wet on wet more confidently. I also realized that in my landscape paintings, I'm using too much texture. Everything is very hairy. That came from Helen's classes. That's where I picked it up. I also realized my color palettes are kind of scary at times because I'm using straight green paint from the box, but it took me months to realize it and to see it. You might think, why is she talking about painting? What about surface pattern design? But take a look, I bring my skills into surface pattern design as well. So here are some of my painterly designs. So while learning, it is the little realizations that you make that help you grow. But it's important to not let those realizations drown you. Learn to analyze your artwork lightly and in the most objective way possible. That's why being in a friendly group of fellow designers or artists can also help. It is very important to allow yourself to screw up some artwork. I cannot stress it enough. It can seriously hold you down, growing as an artist if you only aim at creating masterpieces. Please know that even very successful artists allow themselves to screw up. They often have a pile of messed up paintings and so on. It came as a shock to me at some point because I thought that the famous or established artists don't have a fear starting a new painting, but they still do. I remember last summer I went on a painting workshop in Vermont with Ian Stewart, a famous painter, and he said that he was afraid to start a demo, to start a painting where he had a photo of, some oil on water, where you have those like oil circles on water. And he was like, I'm scared because I've never painted this before. And hearing this from him was like, one, there is something that you have never painted. And two, you're saying you're scared to start a painting, just like me, just like anybody else. And I also heard it from the other artist, Frank Eber, whose art workshop I took. He was also sharing that, sometimes I mess up a painting. He's very critical about his own work. If you look at his Instagram, he's often like, this one's overdone, this one's not quite there yet. He's very, very self-critical, an acclaimed famous artist. Now let's go back to surface pattern design. All the same principles apply. If you are repeating after your favorite designer, try to depart from their exact palette or drawing style. Try a slightly newer color palette. Don't be afraid to mess up. While designing, which is a little different from fine art, we also need to keep marketability in mind, but that is the last thing to be on our minds. First, we need to make sure we can create aesthetically pleasing motifs. Then we need to make sure the repeat is technically working and stepping out correctly. And then when those two are on point, you can start thinking about marketability, originality, and noticing your unique style. Truth is, things don't always work in order. Some people get caught up trying to plan everything ahead, and it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you find a really cool technique and it becomes the backbone of your style, such as block printing or scratchboard, but other times it's vice versa. You learn the technical aspects first, you make perfectly flawless repeats that are not very original but super marketable, and then you start searching for the perfect it factor. In general, in order for the style to shine through, the only reliable way is to make a lot of artwork fearlessly. A lot can mean different numbers, a different number of hours or months or even years for different people. It actually took me several years to find what I truly like making and what I am good at. I was constantly making artwork. It surprised me because I had these misconceptions like, oh, I've been making art since childhood. I got this. I know how it's done. If you have the technical skills of painting and so on, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the whole picture figured out. I often made this mistake, especially after working in-house, judging by, oh, I know how to paint this. Oh, I can draw like that too. Don't just go with the technique and skills. Ask yourself, why are you painting this? Why are you making a repeating pattern with these motifs? For example, you are drawing for the brief of happy animals. Why did you draw specifically dogs? It's important. It might be because you genuinely adore dogs or you want to honor your favorite pet. When I think of happy animals, I think of otters, capybaras, raccoons. They make me cackle with their funny and carefree behavior, and I want to capture that. I love frogs too, and pigs, hippos. Here we go, I've made all this artwork. I find that the best designs happen when you have a true connection with the subject, such as these capybaras. I had so much fun drawing them, and I think my happiness is contagious. But these are, of course, deeper questions that come after you master your technique. Trying a bunch of art materials can be helpful in discovering your art style. This is such a fun part of art making. In some cases, the technique or the art medium can be a part of the art style. For example, a UK artist and designer, Catherine Rowe, uses scratchboard as her medium, and so all of her designs look very cohesive and instantly recognizable. If you are a block printing artist, most likely all your designs will look very cohesive and recognizable as well. I really like Pauline Groyle's hand-painted fabrics. They are so yummy. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the last name. I'll show you some examples of her work. So in this case, the style is expressed and united via the technique. Besides the technique, you can have a signature color palette or the use of texture. Uta Krogman, known by her professional name Mira Paradis, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, has an instantly recognizable color palette and uses gradient, grained textures in Procreate flawlessly. We're friends on Instagram. She's the sweetest person. She's also a spoonflower artist who constantly participates in design challenges. And sometimes when I vote in the challenges, I see a design in this color palette of coral, teal, and yellow, and I realize someone else just used a similar palette. I get so surprised because I already perceive this palette as her signature sign. I personally also know an illustrator who has illustrated several children's books as well as magazine articles, and her signature thing is a little triangle nose. The characters have a little triangle shape for a nose, so you can also choose your little shtick consciously. It's like once I watched an interview with a Ukrainian singer, Konstantin. I'm a fan of his work, and suddenly he started wearing a cowboy hat at some point, and so the interviewer was like, why did you do that? And he said that he wanted to create an instantly recognizable silhouette like Michael Jackson with his hat or Elvis, so he consciously chose this styling trick, and so can you if you want to. So the elements of style are the art medium, how you create your artwork, line work, what kind of lines do you use, contours, silhouettes, colors, of course, the use of contrast, shapes, proportions, symmetry or asymmetry, amount of detail, topics you illustrate, products you make art for. Even if you're just selling originals, it's still a choice. Another thing I want to mention is not everybody has a distinct style. It might sound like something bad and scary, but I promise it's not, especially if we're talking about surface pattern design. Look around, all these beautiful patterns everywhere. We have no idea who made them, and that's okay. Commercial work needs to be marketable first of all, which means it's easy to understand for the general public and easy to relate to. For example, tropical prints for swimwear or plaids. These are generic patterns that don't necessarily show over-the-top personality. They are just well-drawn, well-balanced prints. Another scenario in finding your art style is kind of vice versa, when you already have a style, but you are just not noticing it. Maybe you don't even like it and you deny it. It happens when you have some preconceptions that, for example, to draw simplistic stick figures is not good enough, and the only good art that counts is the style of Michelangelo, for example. It often happens when you received some type of formal training in the past in art. But the world of modern art is so diverse, and I encourage you to lean deeper in what you are already creating. There is no right or wrong art. These times have long gone by, when you could only portray angels or like religious plots. Create what you enjoy. In the long run, it really matters. I think an art style is born at the intersection of these three things. 1. What am I skilled at and I can see myself creating a lot of? 2. What I really enjoy creating. I'm a big believer in passion. And 3. What people like, need, and would buy. If one of these components is missing, the plan is not going to be sustainable. You will either get bored or burned out, or no one will buy it. We can influence the first two factors. We can improve our skills and consciously create art that makes us happy. That's the second point, right? As for the third one, we have to observe the trends, notice what is selling better for us, what is doing better for us. If your goal is to sell art, because you might not even be interested in selling, it's okay to do art for fun as well. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, there is a disconnect between our skills and our taste. For example, you really like detailed Procreate art, but you don't know how to get there. Or maybe you like vintage engravings. I do. And that's your taste level, but you absolutely cannot draw like this. You can choose here whether you will separate your taste and skills or bring them together and strive to learn what you cannot yet do. It's up to you. One can also have several styles. If you can consistently create strong artwork in several artwork styles, I say what's wrong with that? It's a controversial point because if you do multiple things at once, it can slow your growth in terms of marketing and sales. I touched on this topic in my video about niching down, but I know many creative people do have trouble narrowing down to only one style. Bad news, you will have to do some narrowing down. Editing out is an important skill for a designer and for artists as well. You cannot include absolutely everything you see in your painting or your art frame or photograph, whatever art you do. But the good news is you don't have to fully abandon all your passions. Just set priorities and think how to best present your artwork in different styles to the world. It can be things like having separate Instagram accounts or even websites, or pitching to different companies separately, or having folders in your portfolio. Now, this last point I think is the most important. Are you ready? Don't get hung up on finding your art style. It can lead to analysis paralysis. When you examine artwork too closely and make attribute lists, you are switching from right brain to left brain. Art making is a right brain activity where you let go of analytical thinking, play and have fun, while left brain is very structured and logical. Don't let one hinder the other. Some amount of analytics is necessary, but not to the extent when you get so fixated on determining your exact art style that you stop making artwork altogether for some time or forever. Been there, done that. Remember to have fun. I mix up business and analytics with art making and soul all the time. And I have to remember myself that I'm supposed to be having fun and enjoying the process and not killing myself with overthinking. The shortest answer to how to find your art style is make more art. Make more art that you enjoy. Make bad art. Make quick art. Experiment. Repeat something. Challenge yourself. Make something difficult. Try something easy. Work for a design brief. Work without a design brief whatsoever. Make a pattern no one has ever done before. Make a pattern that you would like to buy but you cannot find it anywhere. Copy your favorite artist's work. Don't try to sell it, and maybe don't even show it to anyone. It's a learning experience, it's an exercise. Enter an art marathon or design challenge. You know, when you draw a topic for a month or even a year, these are a really great exercise in finding your style. Because you commit to a topic and or a medium, and if you are doing it with a group of peers, you feel accountable and keep showing up to make more art. And your style will reveal itself eventually. What kind of art do you make? Is it mostly surface pattern designs and visual art, or maybe you write songs or poetry? Do you have any insights to share with us? Comment below. If you have enjoyed this video, hit those like and subscribe buttons, share this video with your pattern and art buddies, follow me on Instagram, pattern_talent, and Daria Karensky is my new painting account, which is still a work in progress, and I actually started that second account in order to look at my fine art closer and separately from my illustration and surface pattern design work, and as a part of that, explore my painting style better. That's it for today. I hope you have a lovely day, and remember, artwork is everywhere.